Welcome to the Cyber Sangha podcast. Cyber Sangha is a program of free live broadcasts, launched in 2009 by renowned teacher and author Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. Join us as we draw on ancient Tibetan wisdom to discover how to connect with our best self and live to our highest potential. The following conversation, Natural Paths to Well-Being, happened on September 20, 2022, as a science and spirituality dialogue with Stephan Rechtschaffen, Wenli Liu, Geshe Tenzin Wangyal, and Alejandro Chaoul-Reich. This was part of a year-long series, Bring Body, Speech, and Mind to Life. This content is for informational purposes only. Listeners should consult medical professionals for any physical or mental health concerns. Please use headphones and do not meditate while driving or operating machinery.
Welcome everyone to Cyber Sangha, to our dialogues of science and spirituality. And I want to thank our team, Poli, Milos, Ellen, and so many that are behind the scenes supporting what we are doing every month. And for those of you who are new to Cyber Sangha, basically it is that Sangha, that community that we meet in this cyberspace. And this is, Cyber Sangha is really the brainchild of Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, who started this way before COVID started, to realizing that we can connect to people around the world, even without moving from our place. And of course, during COVID, this expanded and extended into numerous programs that both Rinpoche does, as well as these dialogues, but also 24-hour, every full moon, we do a 24-hour all online, and we pass the baton from one place to the other. So keeping it alive for 24 hours, it's beautiful. I think the next one is October 9, so everyone is welcome to join. So today, as we do this Cyber Sangha dialogues, and what we do in general in Cyber Sangha is we've been moving from the three doors of body, speech or breath, and mind. And now we're back to the body. Now, last time we were talking about the body, we were also talking about wellness and longevity. And last time we had Dr. Mauricio Bon from Costa Rica, that actually sometimes is very close to Dr. Stephan Rechtschaffen, and Dr. Punzo Wamo, a Tibetan doctor. Today, we have Dr. Stephan Rechtschaffen and Dr. Wenli Liu. And I'll mention a little more of them in a moment, but I want to give them a warm welcome to this dialogue. It's really so good to have you here. Rinpoche, Wenli, Stephan, so good to have you here. So I think people have read about you, but I'm going to say a little bit about you anyways. It's always good to present you. Some people didn't get to read. And Rinpoche is probably not need much introduction to this group, but still, as I said, he was the founder and brainchild, of Cyber Sangha. He teaches around the world. He was born in India to Tibetan parents and did the monastic training in Menri Monastery in India. Just interesting for this dialogue too. Menri means medicine mountain. So his monastery was already with that part of medicine in it. And then he came to the West, lucky us, and he came to the West around 30 years ago, and he started teaching in Virginia, where his main center, Ligmincha International, is, and then has centers in 35 places around the world. So Rinpoche, thank you for always being so welcome to, open to keep on teaching all over the world and coming to these dialogues. So thank you. Wenli, so good to have you here. So Wenli and I work together at MD Anderson. Wenli got her medical degree from Hunan Medical University in Changsha, China, and then she came to the West. And she came and did her training in internal medicine here at the University of Texas Health Science Center, where she stayed for so many years. And that's where she then joined the faculty at MD Anderson and she stayed for 22 years there, and just now she's starting private practice. And she has a wonderful combination of that, which she brings from being born in China and studied in China, even though she studied Western medicine, this part of Chinese medicine also, and nutrition. So I really look forward to your contribution today. And of course, Dr. Stephan Rechtschaffen, who's he's an MD, but he's also an author and visionary. Maybe many of you know Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, upstate New York. He's the co-founder of it. And then I think after a while, he realized I need to walk my talk, and decided to really embrace well-being and move to Costa Rica, to a blue zone in Costa Rica, and that's why he called it Blue Spirit. And he has a fantastic center there, and there's many things of how to really lead a more wholesome and authentic lifestyle, and we'll talk about that too. So welcome, Stephan, to the dialogue as well. So usually, actually, I start with our presenters, but today I want to start with you, Rinpoche. I want to start with you because I was thinking this morning, you were trained in a monastic way in a Tibetan monastery, and the ways that we think today of nutrition and exercise were not really part of your lifestyle. However, you have embraced this, even in your teachings. So in the last teachings, you were talking, with the three doors, and you were talking about intermittent fasting. You were talking about importance of wellness. Do you want to tell us a little bit how do you see this aspect of wellness is important for us as human beings in the spiritual path?
Yeah, so in some sense, you're right. I think that in growing up in a monastery or Tibetan monastery, we are not probably so much afraid of death, or maybe think about death as a part of everyday, part of the reality. So even though there is a practice of longevity and so, but the day to day in terms of the nutrition, food, exercise, it's not so much frequently emphasized or practiced. And in fact, when I was in the beginning, when I was left, the monastery was fine, but when I coming to the West, I was not in the best shape of my own, and so of course, I began to interested in it also more because once you have a family, you have a children. I realize it's important to, if you bring someone in this world, you have to be there for them. At least sometime you have to be there for them. So it began to change a lot of things, and I got very interested in and myself, yeah. So I mean, of course, I don't want to talk too much here right now, but I think I feel it's a really important part of every spiritual journey, that taking care of your body is a very important part. Yeah.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So, Stephan, you were trained as a Western physician. Your first book, I think, was Vitality and Wellness. And you were very interested in that area from early on as you created Omega and then moved to Costa Rica. What are the natural wellness modalities that really attracted you to go into this path from being a physician and, now this kind of, I think of you as a visionary of well-being?
Well, thank you, Alejandro. When I would even start from medical school, I was already considering what are the paths to wellness rather than just what we were taught in medical school, that of just dealing with disease. What can actually prevent disease? At first, I thought about preventive medicine, but then actually, one of the life-changing things for me is I was offered to do a period of time of medical school abroad, and I chose to go to India. And I went to northern India, where they're actually which first opened my mind to Tibetan practice, because we were at a hospital where we were mostly seeing the Tibetans who had come across. We were up in about 7,000 feet. There was an orphanage there. So I started to see very many healthy people there who perhaps had parasitic diseases and so on, but there's a lot of long life in the people up in the mountains. And I started to wonder, what does that when they're not taking needing to take medications? Now, certainly there were infectious diseases, parasites, all sorts of things, but it changed my view completely. And from that time on, the question really was, how does one maintain well-being? And one little thing that I would say regarding that is, I tend to think, and we see this in the West especially, that 50% of the population at any given time has one form of degenerative disease or another. And so I tend to look at it, for the first 30 years of life, you can do anything. We remember times of heavy drinking in our college days or whatever, and still waking up the next day to go to class. The body felt invincible up until about 30 or 40. But then we have a downslide, and we can look at what causes some of that. And for me, the question is not living to 1,000, it's squaring the curve. And so how do we maintain wellness? And so we need to shift from the phase of growth. You can be 6 foot tall by age 30. You will not be 12 foot tall by age 60. So that's where the shift happens. And most people don't realize that lifestyle, inner practice, our diet, our exercise, all of those things, and we can talk more about some of what are the specific modalities. So that's really what I shifted into.
Thank you, Stephan. And Wenli, you were trained in China in a medical school, and maybe there's something that you can share of how there was some of that, of maybe Chinese medicine also involved there. I know you were, from very early on, interested in nutrition, and I know that nutrition in Chinese medicine is very much part of it. Maybe not very different than I think it's incorporated in the medical curriculum here in the US or in the West. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how that impacted your interest in the career that you've decided to take?
Yeah, I grew up in China. Traditional Chinese medicine is really in your life. You cannot get away from it, and because how we eat, how you live your life, and the philosophy is there. In the Western medicine education school, you have to study traditional Chinese medicine as one subject for about a year, so you get the concept of it. And in most of the major hospitals, the practice is kind of a fusion. Even though maybe Western medicine focused and you have traditional medicine department been there, or purely traditional Chinese medicine hospital. Coming here, practicing internal medicine for a long time before I transitioned into integrative medicine, haven't been prescribing a lot of medicine, but it clicked one day is that I read more into how lifestyle, nutrition, and fitness affect a person's cancer development risk, also how they respond to their treatment. And then you look at like Blue Zone, how the longevity distribution around the globe. So in 2009, at that time in Japan, people live past 100 years old. It's about 25% of the population. 1 out of 4 will reach that age, being 100 and over. And but in America, 2010 U.S. census was like 1 out of 5,000 people will reach 100. And right now, they predict that by now, Japan will be 1 out of 2 to reach the age of 100. So we are very, very far behind. And in China, as a child, and parents always say, think before you do, like that's constant reminding. And that's exactly the mindfulness. The way I see it is that I think our mind is definitely the active part of our body, and our body somewhat, I hated to say it, use the word passive. Some of the mechanism is definitely defensive. Let me put that way, a very defensive mechanism. And we need to put the active and the defensive mechanism, kind of put them together. They should not fight each other when it comes to selecting food and lifestyle. Like, the way I see meditation, yoga or Tai Chi, all the practice, they look very calm, but they are active mechanism. You have to very actively put down on the things that you really, what make you nervous or anxious, what give you the inflammation. That's an active action of putting it down and put your mind, at ease. And so that's the active part of our, of a human being. And also making decisions of what to eat, how to live our lifestyle. So that part is really, I would say, traditional Chinese medicine or Chinese living philosophy, and that is the number one. The mind has to be very active, very clear in a sense to make decision and to make, and then to take the actions to maintain the body's defensive mechanism as alert as possible, but not letting the body's defensive mechanism take the main role to decide health. And so I really think that's a nice fusion. So I definitely love it, integrative medicine. I do feel that the two, to get the best of the two worlds, definitely will work much better. Al, I think you muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Wenli. Thank you. So Rinpoche, clearly this active aspect is something that you've been trained in the monastery very well, and that you were doing this. And as you know, as Stephan said, when he went to the north of India and he looked at many of these people coming from the mountains, yes, maybe as he said, they had some infections but their health was really well, and there's longevity. I know that your teacher, our teacher, is now turning almost 98, 97, Yongzin Tenzin Rinpoche, Tenzin Namda Rinpoche. And so how, these practices, you don't even, I think when you were training, you don't really think of them as lifestyle. They were just part of it. And then did you, I know in the text it says, there's this yont and there's this benefits of the practices, but how much were you doing it for the benefits, or what was really the inspiration of that as you did these practices in your life?
I think when we were growing up, it's part of our life, as Stephan said, that, it's not that we would discuss a lot about nutrition. It's not about, the dietary, the food were not so many choices, the basic, very, very basic foods we ate. But I think it's more than the exercise. It's more than the supplements, more than the dietary foods. I think the set of mind that we were growing up in was the most important part of our well-being. Because in the West, sometimes when I come to the West, I'm interested in both aspects. Exercise. I go to exercise every day, and I, hike and very physically very active and so on. And I'm trying to be careful with what I eat and so on. But when I see in the West, sometimes people who are into exercise or are into diet, or there are extreme cases. For example, if they would go in a shop, they would buy some food, the anxiety, the reading the labels of what it contains, how much fat, how much sugar, how good it is, how bad it is, the anxiety they bring around that nutrition, the medicine, it destroys them. So it's not benefit of knowing so much, because what they know is destroying them. Basically, they're so anxious about it. I met one time in the airplane, the lady who was sitting next to me, I could feel high vibration. It's affecting me, but she was eating the right thing, but being in a wrong state of mind and the body. So I do believe that I think that in the West, sometimes this overemphasize. I sometimes jokingly tell, eat some junk food with the good friends rather than eating a healthy food with the lonely, sad feelings. So I think you have to look the mind, your whole totality of your being more important than actual substances that you're using or not using. I'm not saying I feel that way. So I really do. One thing I do feel is a very important part of my own life is that, as in the teaching, they always talk about take breaks. Take break with your pain identity, take break with your effort, take break with your anxiety, take break with always people around you, take break with work, take break with take sleep long. I trying to sleep. The other night I was so proud and so happy. I slept 9 hours. So and don't think about you're wasting your time when you're able to sleep 9 hours. When you catch up with every work that you have to do, or this whole idea of ability to take break with all the things, a intermittent fasting. Bottom line, you're taking a break from food. Sleeping, you're taking a break from your thoughts. So ability to give so much space, time to your body and mind, I think it seems like more key. And then, which is the place where there's more social connectivity comes, right? I heard that in Harvard, there was a research about 30,000 people. The most number one, the cause for longevity was social interactions, social connections, not the medicine, not the exercise, not the food, not dietary supplements, not even clean air, not even vaccines, nothing. It was the connection that people have between each other. That's what we grow up with. But we did not grow up with all the supplements and all the, all the gym supplements and, juice maker. And we don't grow up anything. Yeah.
Thank you, Rinpoche. And yes, clearly, this aspect of connection that you say is so important. There's tons of research supporting that, and even more now during COVID, right? That people felt so isolated. So, kind of coming back into connection is so important. Now, as you were talking that, I was thinking of you, Wenli, because I know I've seen you as a clinician. I've seen you with patients, and you can be quite strict, being, hey, do read every label and do see all that, right? And at the same time, this aspect, as Rinpoche is saying, the state of mind. So, tell us a little bit of how you think of this.
Well, I agree with Rinpoche and saying about junk food in a sense, because he lives a very healthy life. When you live a very healthy life, your health bank is rich, so you can afford to spend a little. But for a patient who has not lived a healthy life and has not really been careful with lifestyle choices, and hit with a chemo or big surgery or radiation, the health bank is at the verge of bankrupt. Cannot afford to do that. And the reason we need to read the labels is when we were little, everything was fresh. My mom go to the farmer's market to get the fresh seasonal vegetable. It is not a vegetable that shipped from somewhere that, in the middle of winter, you're eating cucumber and tomato. It's not like that. It's whatever it's in season, you have it. Fish, the same thing. When the rice, the water rice field dries up, they also have fish in there. So you eat the fish, and it's not having any let's say fertilizers, whatever in there. So it's a different environment. Right now, you have the food so super refined, and then you have additives to add in the food to make it not to get contaminated or infected with the bacteria. And if you think those chemicals, such tiny microgram, milligram amount can inhibit the bacteria for 2 years. Think what it will do to our colon bacteria community, right? So I think anybody, I mean, that's why young people, you eat wrong, or you probably did not sleep for some hours, and the next day they recover very quickly. It is because that, I have to say, their health bank is just richer. It's just by nature of their age. And working in MD Anderson 20 some years, I've seen plenty of those situations that their health condition, I would say their bank, it's just not that rich. So I am strict with them, because if they get the platinums, their magnesium already so low, eating a hamburger will do them no benefit at all. So they have to get the nutrients from their food. That's why you see me being strict. Yes.
Thank you, Wenli. What an important concept of this health bank. And Stephan, you were talking a little bit of that as well, as when we get up to 30 or maybe 40, kind of, you didn't use the same word, but I think the same concept of our health bank, and then we start kind of going down. And so, tell us a little bit about your choice of going into kind of a space that supports that, like a blue zone. Before, Wenli mentioned about Japan, and I guess particularly those would be in Okinawa, right, where another blue zone, right? So, Stephan, do you want to talk a little bit about why you chose that as a sense of support, and maybe of, if we want to use this concept of health bank, of of how it promotes your health bank account?
Well, I'm going to digress a bit from that, because I'd rather look at I came to Costa Rica. I so love the nature here, and I think being with nature supports us very deeply. But if we look at nature itself as part of our being, instead of just looking out there, it's green or something like that, if there's a tree, but really feel our connectivity. And when we say the word I consists of 37 trillion cells in our body. Which one happens to be I? So we are a collective. Now, we all learned that in evolution is survival of the fittest. I think that's completely false, a false assumption. And if you look back on the planet since life began, for the first 1.5 billion to 2 billion years on the planet, there were only single cell organisms. At a certain point, there became cooperative relationship. And why it's important is the cooperative relationship that started to show up was where mitochondria, as what they were called, became, instead of just eaten by another cell, became a co-participant in the cell. And so every one of our bodies, every one of the cells in our body has somewhere between 500 and 4,000 mitochondria. This is what led to multicellular creatures. And when I say that, the importance of this is the key with mitochondria is that what we know, I often say this in my classes, how long can you live without eating? People will say 3 weeks, 4 weeks. How long can you live without water? Maybe a week. Now, the real key question is, how long can you live without breathing or oxygen? And then we're talking about minutes. So the key to our well-being is how well we utilize oxygen for the utilization, and the mitochondria are the key to producing energy. All of the energy we have in our body comes through the best utilization of mitochondria to produce what is happening in our body to produce energy. So that's really the key to life as far as I'm concerned. So when Rinpoche talks about, for instance, if we look at meditation, if we look at slow breathing, the way I see it is that people who learn to breathe well, and certainly all the meditative traditions have looked at different ways of breathing. I look at heart rate variability. I have machines here in our longevity center that help breathing, that help us learn to breathe better. I have machines here that help us to improve the vitality of our mitochondria. And what happens with that is that we get something called heart rate variability. So what happens is when the body fixes itself into just sort of one rhythmic pattern, we actually start being less healthy. So we want to have a lot of, we want the capacity to fast and to eat well. We want the capacity to be able to exercise fully and then go into very deep relaxation where the pulse rate drops to 40. Or, so to me, somebody who's running a 72 pulse rate all the time or an 80 pulse, that's not healthy. What we want to do is drop down to 40 and go up to 150. The wider we expand our being, the greater our capacity. As that aging to me is where that span starts to narrow. And I look at it in our world today, and I see that in the social climate, we have people who only can have one view of what reality is. And they're fixed on that and can't see the wider picture. Who knows what exactly is going on in this troubled world? But what we see is camps of people who are getting fixated in just there's only one reality. And what's true is there's a wide breadth of the view of reality. And the more we can hold the larger view, this is what I've learned from meditation practice, Tibetan practice, and what I so like to incorporate into the health model that we look at is how do we open the view? And when we open the view toward what we eat, toward the supplements we take, to the way we sleep, and as Rinpoche said to me now, I grew up in New York City, so sleep was never on the agenda for a long time. Now, one of the great things for me is going to bed earlier and having longer sleep. And I know, according to the work of Dr. Matthew Walker, probably the best sleep expert out of England in the world, that what he says is during the night, when you're really in deep sleep, what happens is the spinal fluid washes out, because of the pressure gradient change, washes out all the debris in the brain. What debris? Beta amyloid. And what does that do? That's what causes dementia. So I work with a center for the last 30 years that does a lot of work with autism. The rate of autism in the last 30 years has gone up 200-fold worldwide. The rate of dementia is also going up very strongly. So it's not a question of how long we live, but how well we live. So all of these things, from the way we breathe, the way we sleep, the way we eat, the way we exercise, and the way we utilize oxygen, and all of this is for me what I focus on. And that's what we deal with people who come here to our longevity center, to see not about living to 1,000, but to see how to live well for their life.
Thank you, Stephan. That was wonderful. Now, Rinpoche, you're talking about mindset, and as Stephan was talking about, all the cells in our body the other day, you also mentioned, as we change our cells every second, probably like 3.8 million cells in our body. What's really important is, where's our mindset when that is happening, right? And is that affecting that? So I was also thinking that as we do that, we are breathing, as Stephan emphasized, the aspect of breath. And there's in the teachings, there's a beautiful teaching about how lung has all these aspects. So lung as prana or chi, kind of this, it goes all the way from the space of nature all the way into into being, into rest, into starting to manifest, and sometimes into starting to manifest as disease, right? So we have that breath that they talk about, the horse of the mind that starts causing movements, and through that, the force of karma starts pushing it, and then we go into the mental afflictions, and then into the humors of the body that cause disease, and then even into the causing problems in the environment. So from that part of mindset, Rinpoche, what can we do for, to work with that breath so that we don't let it get into all these kind of detrimental parts, but actually being able to come back to being in this mindset, and so that we can affect positively as the cells keep on changing.
Yeah, so first, I think when Lee making comment about the labels, I think I absolutely, I respect that. I think and definitely not everybody's same. Some situations, you definitely, it's a very, very important point. And so just wanted to say that. But generally, in our where we grow up, and where I've been also one point in my life, I was very much into the labels. Also, I did, and I felt anxiety of like how much contents of fats and things like that. So I went through those kind of things. Then I realized that there are also the mind and the wind part plays a very important role. So I kind of now focus everywhere, but emphasize a little bit on the mind. And as Alex was mentioning, for example, in Tibetan tradition, in meditation, they talk about the subtle wind and the subtle mind. So let's say it this way. So what does that mean, subtle wind and subtle mind? It means a lot of things in the Tibetan context. But if from Western point of view, what it could mean, the way in our topic of discussion, it has something to do with, I think, this sense of a pain identity. Every given moment, there is a sense of identity that there is. A sense of who I am. I'm strong, I'm weak, I'm good, I'm bad, I can do it, I can't do it, I will. So this sense of I, very subtle sense of mind, I is there, always playing the role of everything, So even in they say, right, like a multiple personality, one personality can be infected by one disease, but not the other personality can be infected by the same disease. But even though they are sharing the same body, the personality identity plays more important role than the chemicals in their body. So the body is the same body, but way they identify themselves, one can fight the disease, one will killed by the disease. So that identity, I think, is very important. Then identity accompanies with the wind. So in the wind, in a simple sense, will be the breath. So if you think about the breath, so I was just sharing the other day an idea of in one single day, 330 billion cells are replaced every single day. So 3.8 million cells every second. So every second, right now, 300 what was that? 330 or 3.8 million cells are replaced every second. So that means that's a lot of cells. So during this moment when it's replacing it, what kind of cell it will replace will depend very much what kind of identity, in my point of view, what kind of identity this person has and what kind of wind, the energy that this person is breathing. In a subtle sense, it's a very subtle, many different kind of wind qualities it breathes. But in a grosser sense, even just simple version of, am I breathing slow? Am I breathing deep? Am I breathing from my heart? Am I breathing from my belly? And I've been personally paying a lot of close attention to this every day. And even in the night when there are nights when I wake up, I will immediately go into my breathing. And it's been really amazingly powerful. Like even yesterday night, I felt that, even when I woke up, I did the circle of breathing. I went immediately, but even I did not know when I went back to sleep. It was not like this maybe 10 years, 15 years ago. Wanting to sleep will take all my sleep away, but not when I don't bring the breath in the function part. So I do believe that, like Stephan talking about the heart rate variability, and they talk about, like if you breathe in 4 seconds in and breathe deep breathing out 6 seconds out, maybe hold 4 seconds in. If you do this cycle of breathing, basically just simple as that. You do this cycle of breathing, your heart rate variability will be greater. That means that will benefit overall health. Many aspects of the health will affected by simple cycle of breath, and which is not difficult to do. I mean, I've been trying to see how many hours I can do every day, on standing on a line in a cafe, instead of everybody's looking at the young guy saying this very slow, it's not efficient, and when I'm going to get my coffee, and they're kind of almost attacking 4 or 5 people, this young guy. I noticed that. I noticed that I was almost ready to do the same thing. Come on. Even saying come on was not the right thing to do that moment. And I can see when I say come on, my breath is different. And when I started doing my breathing deeper, not only it went very fast, I felt so good afterward. So I think there's this simple idea of this everyday moment, because every moment we are, this question about being immune system being strong or not. You can build immune system with the medicine, with the food, with the counting those calories, fat, sugar, salt, all those things. But whole point to start with, why you lost your immune system, strength of your immune system to begin with. You're wasting all your strength for nothing. You're trying to fight when there's no enemy. You're losing all the energy where nothing, no good outcome is there. So it's always about, seems like very much preserving what body is naturally able to recreate, rejuvenate, preserving it, not fighting against anything. The world is a peaceful place. Think about that. Breathe deeper. Feel you're safe. When you're breathing, when the moment you are safe, you are breathing very slow, very relaxed. And you can do that same breathing even you are in threat. Because sometimes your threat is something that you create in your head. Now, in reality, there's nothing there. So anyway, I think this is a simple factor of the breath. The wind and the mind plays very important role to more prevention, more not losing, more naturally, I think, recovering a lot of things like that in our everyday life. Because in Tibet, like there are a lot of people, there might be people who have never eaten any vegetables. Of course, never, I don't know, but hardly ever. They're nomadic people, they live with sampa, but they live very long life also, very healthy life also. So it's all the things in today's world, so much is needed. It's also some degree it's commercialized also, like you need this product to, if you don't have this product, you get sick and you die in 4 years or something. So buy this, okay. So you're eating all those things also with anxiety rather than being a little bit aware of your environment, the connection to the nature. I'm talking too much over here. One last thing I'll say. This summer I was fasting, and I've fasted a number of times before. But one thing I realized this summer was nourishing from the connection with the nature. I discovered that. I felt very strong sense. It's not so much, like fasting. Of course, we fast, or not eating, but how you nourish yourself during fasting. I felt that was so important part of my journey of fasting, because fasting can be effortful, but fasting can be very joyful, but fasting can be very nourishing. You nourish your body more during fasting when you're aware of your surrounding, the nature and loved ones, gifts of life, the positive energy around that can bring so much more nourishment. But otherwise, fasting will lose you energy. So the differences between how much you're able to nourish yourself during fasting was a very important part.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you. This is, again, it seems that all of you are agreeing on this concept of health bank, of the immune system in a way being more than just the physical immune system. Sometimes I like to talk about the emotional, mental, and spiritual immune system, but this kind of health bank in a very deep way. And so I think this is really important. And fasting, I know all three of you are very interested in this topic. And I love, Rinpoche, as you say, kind of fasting as nourishing. So Wenli, when you talk about fasting, whether it's to your patients that, as you said, they have a kind of the health bank is less, but in general also, how would you recommend fasting in one, for someone who has the health bank healthy, and for those who have it a little lower? What are some of the recommendations, and particularly, do you also think of it as this nourishing quality that Rinpoche is talking about?
Yes. So there are several parts to the fasting. Everybody fasts. You at least fast even for multiple small meals a day. There's still intervals in between that we're not eating and drinking. So I do recommend for most of my patients, because we're talking about different population here, that I recommend what I would call a physiological fasting. You just have to give your body to recover, because our food from stomach to the large intestine, usually about 4 or 5 hours. That's exactly how we, kind of eat. And when you eat it too early, your stomach hasn't recovered. The acid is not as strong. So it really affects the digestion. I mean, when we eat it, the digestive system is working, basically. We need to let them rest as well. That's one thing. But another thing about fasting is that as Rinpoche is talking about, it's also kind of nourishing. It is because that this is very much so, I find, in people who in need of weight loss. So people have the anxiety of thinking about fasting when the hungry feeling hit, right? So the mind, the perseverance, the resistance about this kind of confidence and trust that your body will definitely survive that period of time. If you said, okay, I'm going to train myself. If I never fasted even for 3 hours, I will do 3 hours for now. And next I will do 4 hours. So one time I did this to my kids was that we went to watch Indian Wells, a tennis match. And then we went to Joshua Tree Park. I know inside that park, there's no vending machine. There's just no restaurant, nothing. You enter the park, you pretty much, as far as the food, if nothing in your truck, you're done for the day. So I remember I entered the park around kind of 10:30, right? By lunchtime, my kids were asking me. I said, here's your chance to be able to distract yourself, the feeling from kind of feeling hungry, but yet still able to have fun, climb rocks, enjoy the scenery, explore. And this is your ability to do it. And, they did it until we got out of the park at 4 o'clock. So it is a training, especially for people who have that anxiety. So when you're able to think, that is a necessary sort of a skill to have, and able to do it without the anxiety. And that is nourishing, and not only to solve the problem of obesity, but it's also nourishing for somebody's the mindset to be at ease with something might be difficult to do, and that is a skill they have to acquire, let alone when the necessary weight loss is done for the body physiologically, and the resting for the digestive system. It's very much necessary in between meals. And so I usually recommend my patients, depends on their physical requirement, maybe 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day at the most, unless part of their digestive system is gone, like their stomach major part is gone, or a large part of the small intestine is gone. So I may do adjustment for majority of the population. No more than 3 meals a day. Yeah. And no snack in between. That's usually what I would recommend that.
I have a question here, Wenli, a more practical question here. I'm usually trying to do the intermittent fasting, and usually, even though in Tibetan medicine they say eat breakfast, not dinner, but my social life doesn't work very well with that. So I usually, do the opposite. So I try to skip breakfast. Mhm. So when I skip breakfast, coffee does not have a calorie, so they say coffee is okay if that's the correct information. But I do tend to put sugar, which is not, which basically you're breaking. It's not no longer of intermittent fasting because of the sugar, a spoon of sugar there. So my question is, these very strict intermittent fasting, no calorie at all, 16 hours, or when you do have something like a spoon or maybe a little juice, but you're still not eating any bread or any croissant, and especially, nothing. You're still breaking the rule, but so it's still, of course, I believe it is a benefit, but maybe not as benefit as seriously doing the intermittent fasting, right?
Well, I think because the really long-term study, especially let's say randomized controlled trials, is almost not there. So when people do, let's say 2 days, even 3 days to 16 hours of fasting, in a sense, you're testing the ability, how much your body can do without calorie support. It's like, just because you have the ability to run a marathon, that is your stamina, you can sustain that amount of effort. Does not necessarily mean running a marathon is very beneficial. So that's just two separate. So what you can do versus that thing that's beneficial is one thing. But getting back on the coffee, adding a sugar, actually that is beneficial because that actually do make the antioxidants work better in the coffee with the sugar than without the sugar, and probably less damaging to your stomach, no doubt. I do recommend people eating breakfast because that's when your gallbladder accumulate the most juice, and it's better to release them with some fat and protein and some calorie balance there in the morning probably is ideal. But I did have a teacher who actually only ate 1 meal a day. I mean, he lived to be 87, 84, I forgot. Fairly longevity. But I don't know the changes. Like if you do that for a long time, does your body change? You sense, okay, breakfast for you is lunch. And then the body will remember, okay, I do that at lunchtime, all the release of the liver juice, in a sense, in the traditional Chinese medicine sense, the liver has to discharge, right? You have to have the liver discharge, otherwise you'll be in trouble. I don't know if our body adjusts that way. And I wish I could see different studies on the body physiology. How do we adjust if somebody eats just 2 meals a day forever or only 1 meal a day for a long time? And I don't see that information out there.
Thank you, Wenli. I'm going to go to Stephan, but I wanted to say a couple of things that you mentioned that I think are really important. One is that, when we think of fasting, even the 3-4 hours between meal can be fasting. And I think that's important. The other part is what you were just saying. I mean, I like Rinpoche, I usually don't eat, I haven't had breakfast yet, and here it's almost noon, right? And this is when I'll have my breakfast lunch. And I don't know, maybe my body is adapting, maybe not. Now, Stephan, I know because, I've been with you at Blue Spirit, and actually you and Wenli both like to play tennis. And I remember that you would go and play tennis with almost an empty stomach, or, or maybe a drink that was just vegetable juice. Can you tell us a little bit, and you do actually, as you have a longevity center, can you tell us a little bit about from your perspective?
Yeah, I'm of the belief, and again, it goes back to there's the growing phase of life, and then there's the rest, repair, and maintenance. And so once you're in rest, repair, and maintenance, I do think that intermittent fasting is really sensible. I don't think it matters whether you're doing lunch, breakfast and lunch, or lunch and dinner. But to have a longer period of time of fasting, so that's what I do this morning. I've had coffee. I would say, no, I don't agree about the sugar. I think what we want to be doing is lessening our carbohydrate intake more than anything else. I think a little fat is okay. So if one wants to do that, it's not going to get the system. What you're trying to do is basically quiet the system down. Have, again, a wider period of time, like I was saying, with sleep, where there's the resting of the system. So that's generally the way I've tended to look at it. Now, in terms of fasting, I think one of the things that we need to know about aging is that we have something called senescent cells. They're somehow also referred to as zombie cells. When we're young, what a senescent cell is essentially a cell that's taking up space, but it's non-functional. You could think of it like a car with 6 cylinders. And if you only have 5 cylinders, the car is still operating, but it's not operating efficiently. So we don't want to have a lot of these non-operating cells within the body. It's true, as Rinpoche was saying, that we are always breaking down cells and rebuilding, but we still have a buildup. Now, if we're eating all of the time, as happens in, as we see the obesity incidents, people are eating so much that they start to be filled, and by the time of someone reaching a certain elderly age, they can have 8-9% of their body in the form of these senescent cells. Now, what happens during fasting is the body looks for food. And what it looks for is it doesn't go after the heart muscle that's working. It doesn't go after the brain cells that are working. It goes after these senescent cells. So fasting on a regular basis. Now, I think there are many different types of fasting. Fasting for gut health so that we're rebalancing the microbiome. But there's also fasting for getting rid of these senescent cells. And one of the ways to do that, which is not an easy fast, but I try and do it about twice a year, which is a 4-day water fast. Absolutely nothing. It's just water. I don't enjoy it. But the interesting thing is, my body responds on day 2. Often I'll go play tennis and I'll be able to play a full game of tennis. So the body has a lot of stored energy. And we can use that energy rather than it just sitting there and degrading. So that's in the form of the different cells. The body will it's what our society at large doesn't do. We don't recycle. So our environment is filled with debris because if the iPhone isn't working, or we just throw it away or something like that. So this is what's happening. We need to be aligned with the way nature works. Nature is extremely good at recycling. Nothing is wasted. And yet obesity is a sign of wasting because the muscles are broken down, and it's just, when we become obese in our society, it's not because people are eating too much fat. What's actually happening is they're eating too much sugar. And in the body, what happens is sugar is stored as fat. When we're in good health, when we're exercising, we're basically burning fat at about a 2-to-1 ratio of fat to sugar, or fat to glucose. What goes on for too many people is when they get out of shape, we have forgotten the ability or unlearned the ability to burn the fat. So we just are living on sugar. And so we feel, I don't have enough energy. Let me have something more with sugar. We're training the body into bad habit. And we want to be living out of a good habit. And the good habit is being this right balance of using fat. So taking fat in the morning, if you're going to fast, putting a little something into the coffee that is just fat but not sugar, that's actually, I think, the better way to do it.
I was going to ask you about that, Stephan. I remember that you have what's in some places they call the bulletproof coffee, right? Which is actually very similar to the pucha, right? To the Tibetan tea.
Yeah.
Where
When I
They
make
add butter.
tea instead of coffee at home, I make a tea with milk. So I do put little ghee in the
Yeah.
tea.
Yeah.
So
That's
I was going to
fantastic.
ask you, Stephan, can you tell us a little bit the benefit of that? Why that extra fat, whether it's ghee or whole milk? I mean, can you tell us a little more? And can you speak closer to the mic? I hear you when
Okay.
you move. I hear it back and forth. Thank
Okay.
you.
So I actually have shifted a bit since you've last seen me. I don't use the bulletproof coffee anymore. I do
Okay.
think that it's better for young people who need more energy. So again, when you're building, so I think a lot of the younger athletes and so on will benefit from that because you want the calories, but you don't want it in the form of sugar, so you take it in the form of fat. I don't think it's a problem, but I also think it's also not necessary. So there's whatever the balance is and whatever you feel comfortable with. Again, I don't think it's a problem. I will often have put a little coconut oil in or something like that. But if I don't, I don't. I think the key really is as long as you're feeling enough energy, you're okay. And whether you need it or not, that's where you determine. I think the real key is avoiding the carbohydrate, avoiding the sugar. Because sugar is the real downfall in Western society. And I would say one of the things that I've been thinking is that while I said before there are 37 trillion cells in our body, there's almost an equivalent number of bacteria in the microbiome. And so when your mind goes and says, boy, I really like something sweet, the question to really consider is, where did that thought come from? And I would actually say it's not one of our cells. It's one of those cells that we're hosting in the microbiome. And they're really voracious. So we become an addictive society, and sugar is one of the worst addictions. When you give up sugar for a while, which I've done, it's not that I don't like the taste of sugar, but I'm not hearing it going off in my mind all the time. Boy, I could really use something sweet right now. It starts to really drop. And I believe that's one of the important things to health, is really getting rid of that sugar addiction and really exercising. And really what it is, again, as I said before, it's about making our life as wide as we can, so that we're not, what it is, also what I heard Rinpoche say, and I see it in our world right now, there is this focus on me and me wanting to live longer, me wanting to be this. The real answer is the we. And so our society at large, our world at large, needs more of the we, and we are a collection of we selves. And so we can better keep our high level well-being when we're aware of that.
Thank you. So as we have a few minutes left, I wanted to, one more thing that I thought would be interesting to talk about. And there's a lot, and we actually had Wim Hof here a while ago. This idea of, as you said, extending, right? Like the HRV, the heart rate variability by going from hot to cold, but really cold water, even ice water, or even just cold showers. Um, can anyone, I don't know if you want to go for it, Stephan.
I'm going to jump right in because I love both. I live in Costa Rica, but we have an infrared sauna here, and I have actually right outside my office here, I have a horizontal freezer which I fill with cold water, and I do an ice plunge. So after I play tennis, and what's incredible for me at my age, I play tennis for 2 hours in the hot weather here. I come back and I get into the cold ice plunge. It's 3 to 5 degrees centigrade. And I sit in there for 5 minutes, and I hate cold water. But when you do it, it's a meditation. And when I come out, I look at my ankles and my calves, and they look like I'm 20 years old still, because you don't get the inflammation. And we know from the studies, the Nordic studies, that those people, the more saunas you take, the longer you live. So there are certain statistics that verify, and again, this is what I'm talking about, is this wide range. The more we're capable of expanding our being, so from really cold to really hot, I'm certainly a believer of the Wim Hof breathing. I do that on a regular basis. I do my meditation, and then I do Wim Hof breathing. I think that and there are a variety of breathing. All of the spiritual traditions have had so many profound breathing ways that need to be incorporated, from the Tumo breathing, which in a way is what Wim Hof is trying to teach. So I think these are critical.
Thank you, Stephan. Wenli, what do you think of these cold? And I know that in Chinese medicine, you don't drink very cold water, but what about getting into cold water? How's that? Or talk cold, yeah.
It's not that you don't drink cold water. At a certain time, you don't drink cold water. It's more about a person's tolerance. I mean, some people, you drink cold water, that amount of size, if you really equivalent to a calorie, your body warm it up, and how much it cools down locally, the blood vessel, how slow the blood flow will be. For the most people, will not be really that much of a problem, because our body is really an oven, basically can heat a lot of things up. And so that little bitty thing, but the cold shower per se, like Stephan is saying, is that we want our body to have a wide range of tolerance. The wider you are able to do it, the better you are. It's like exercise. People say, I wanted to reach a certain level of heart rate. Heart rate, you get to 160, 180, but you're not short of breath. And that is your cardiac tolerance right there, endurance. The same thing with this. And I would say, not that I enjoy any of this training, but I would say anybody wants to do it slow. And you don't want to not knowing your tolerance, and immediately from sauna, and the next thing I'm going to jump into a cold shower because or cold water, and that amount of slowdown of the blood flow to some people may be a little too lethal. So it's just that they need to know their limit. Yeah. So, one of the cardiac stress tests, remember the spasm of the coronary arteries. If we want to test it, we get ice cold water, have them put their hands in there, right, to test that amount of cold stimulation, because your body immediately spasm the blood vessel to trigger that. So it depends on a person's tolerance. But I do agree that the wider range our body able to tolerate, whether it's a temperature, whether it's the time, the length of your fasting, or the amount of physical ability, that's why some of the medical tests is really stress tests. How fast can somebody, how long the distance you can cover in a 6-minute walking. So this is a sort of ability test. Definitely the wider, the bigger the ability, that just tells you your health bank is good. Yeah.
Thank you for that word of caution as well. Thank you, Wenli. Rinpoche, I know you like this as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of them. I think particularly Wenli. I think this. I mean, it seems like there are more cases of heart attack in the shower. I don't know if it's true or not. I've heard that. So there are people who, I know some close friends also who, doctor, researcher, and everything, who did a really fast running, quite a strong run, and then come back and drinking cold water, and then just died right there. So I think there are this extreme situation. You do want it to be careful, but on the other hand, we do want it to expand our ability. I love the sauna, and then jumping into cold water. I love it. I jump out in the snow and just cover with the snow. Take a hot shower and go out in the snow, and I love that.
Yeah, of course, your health bank is strong. And so what we want to tell the audience is, as they say in Tibetan, kale kale, right? Slowly, slowly. It's good to expand, but to do it at a rhythm that makes sense to you. I want to thank you. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Wenli. Thank you, Stephan. Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, the team supporting it. I wanted to say that next month in October, instead of doing a monthly dialogue like we do, we're actually going to have a whole conference where Rinpoche will be teaching the fall retreat at Serenity Ridge, October 11th to the 16th. That's at ligmincha.org. And we'll have Rinpoche teaching, but also we'll have we have dialogues every afternoon, and we'll have different speakers coming to the dialogue. We have Tibetan Dr. Punzawamo. We'll have a researcher from Harvard and a Kundalini teacher, Sadbir Khalsa Singh. We'll have Geshe Yongdong from the Burn tradition, and we'll have Loni Jarrett, who's a Chinese medicine expert as well. So if you can join us at Serenity Ridge, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, you can also join online. And in November 16th at 11 a.m. ET, there'll be a dialogue between Rinpoche and John Kabat-Zinn, and I'm very looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cyber Sangha podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Cyber Sangha, visit us online at cybersangha.net.